So over the weekend, I created a lot of nice little short videos on YouTube where I draw interesting patterns visually inside of the piano roll of Bitwig Studio. And some people want to know how I did this, and I want to show you this here. So in Bitwig here, I draw these kind of patterns right into the piano roll. And it's actually not that hard. So I go out here of this, just delete this. And I started basically here with just an instrument track, this one. And on this instrument track, there is a note clip, actually, with all the notes, just as one note, right? I selected all notes I want to use. And if you ask yourself, why is this so colorful? I just used here the right-click option and used pitch class. Normally it looks like this. So with these notes, I trigger basically on the same channel note grid. One note grid here, I have a bunch of note grids for different patterns. So I use this one here. And inside I have some modules applied here. And you can see I'm using the pitch input. So each pitch, each note, I multiply with 120 to get an integer for every note raise. So C3 is 0, C sharp 1 is 1, D is 2, and so on. So I want to get an integer from that. And with this integer, I multiply here the phase, right? So with multiplying the phase, I double basically the frequency of the phase signal here, and then I go into the triggers module. So what it does is basically that I increase the speed or the trigger speed for each node differently, right? And then you get kind of an interesting pattern. And this is some kind of polyrhythm or polymeter. I don't know exactly what it is. But you can see you can then create interesting, visually pleasing patterns just with the piano roll and a bit of note grid magic. And you can see the patch itself is actually not that complicated. It's just that I use here the note grid, and you can see I use 64 voices, so we can use 64 notes, and each note gets basically its own version of this patch here, and I distinguish between the notes here with this pitch module, like I said, multiplying, and then I apply for different notes different trigger speeds, and this results in this pleasing pattern. So then I have here this one. It looks a bit different. There's a different idea here, but also here I use 64 voices. I use absolute module here to basically turn negative values into positive values. I also multiply this by 120 here to get integers. And then I use the modulator out to increase the length of this polymeter. So each node has a different pattern length, basically. I also change for each node here the gate length, so the length of the node is different. And then I go here into pitch quantize. I don't know why I did this, but whatever. So when you record this note grid here, it looks also almost like a 3D corridor here at the beginning. So also interesting pattern. It's just a polyrhythm, and you can record this easily into a note clip here. Then I made this one here as also an experiment. By the way, I use here this ADSR just to keep the the voice alive, basically. That was the idea behind it. Here I do some additional math. Here I basically invert the piano roll, kind of. Also turn negative values into positive ones. I use a pinch here with a 10% pinch, but when you change this, basically the pattern or the visual pattern also changes. I use a mirror here, and then a bit of scaling. And I use also here the modulator out, and I change here also the length of the of the pattern itself. So each node has a different pattern length. So this looks like this. Okay, let's maybe change this here. Right, this creates a different pattern. Ten % is fine. So that's this one. Then I have here another one. That's quite a bit different here. I'm just using an LFO and I think a curve, no, a slow LFO here to increase the LFO speed. So this looks like this. So this writes a lot of notes into the piano roll here. These are all, yeah, working notes with each of them velocity settings and so on. So complete real notes that you write into the piano roll. Quite interesting how, yeah, performant actually Bitwig is here. I mean, I have some lag issues here when I zoom in, but there's a lot of notes right in this note clip. So, but it quite works well. It's actually more fluid when you zoom in. Nice. So this is also something I tried. Then I did another one here. I'm not sure what this one does, but here's also a long curve, 24 bar curve, where I increase certain things here. And you can see I'm using bipolar to unipolar, just to turn also here negative values into positive values. And then let's see how this looks like here. That's quite simple. This part here is quite fun. But yeah, also a polymeter here where I have a different pattern length for each note. As you can see here, they're spread in different speeds apart, and then at some point here they become again the same. Not sure what happens here, why there is here certain things quite off, but I guess that's how polyrhythms work, polymeters work. I don't know. So this was also an experiment I did with this. By the way, I upload this here on my Patreon, so if you want to try out some of these things yourself, you can just download this on my Patreon post. So I share them there. Or here on YouTube, when you are a YouTube member, of course, I share them also on the YouTube community tab. Then another experiment I did was here to use the note grid and create randomized frequencies, not notes, randomized frequencies. And then I turn these frequencies into notes with micro expressions, which means not every frequency is exactly on a note, right? So some of these frequencies are quite between the notes. So in Bitwig, these notes are converted into real notes with pitch bend or with micro pitch bend or micro expressions in the piano roll, which is quite interesting. And instead of feeding here an oscillator with these frequencies or with these notes, I'm creating notes inside of Bitwig and then send them into a polymer synthesizer here. Sounds like this. And I trigger this here with this triggers module. And instead of listening to that, you can also just record this into the piano roll. So let's go in here. Let's use this polymer output here, the note grid output. Hit record. Mute this. You can see this. These are basically here all the notes for these sounds here. And each of these notes here have micro expressions. You can see here these small lines. If I enable this, that some of these pitch bands here are a bit off to actually represent the frequencies, because some of these notes are, like I said, or some of these frequencies are between notes, so you need to pitch bend them. It's quite interesting. So with this, basically with this here, you can just put on that, on this channel here where we recorded all these notes, you can just use here, let's say, an organ. And maybe just disable this here. Or actually not this. Hit play here. And get sounds out of these notes basically. So you use this organ device more like an additive synth and play each of these notes, and because each of these notes have these pitch bands, you get kind of in between notes and frequencies, so it's more like an additive synthesizer. You can also use here a polymer for that, and maybe just use here the sine partial. Delay on it. Maybe select everything, pull it down 1 octave. Oh, you can't, okay, because of these lower notes here. So yeah, also a nice experiment here with the note grid, where I randomize basically here frequencies, I randomize also here the velocity, and I randomize the pressure, and then record everything into a note grid to have this represented by notes and pitch bands, and then you can feed a normal sine synth or a basic synth with this and create sounds or recreate sounds. So I basically save presets as notes inside of the piano roll, which is quite interesting that you can do this in Bitwig. So yeah, some experiments I did over the weekend, and yeah, like I said, I share this on my Patreon. I also share it here on the community tab, so you can try it out for yourself. I share this whole project here, and you can have fun with this. Okay, so that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Leave a like, thumbs up, leave a subscription, and I see you in the next video.